The dark void of space stretched endlessly in all directions as the Zeltharian exploration ship moved slowly through the ancient debris field. Captain Vexthal stood on the bridge watching the main screen with growing curiosity. Broken pieces of metal and strange technology floated past their ship like ghosts from a forgotten war. "Commander Zara, what are your sensors telling us about this place?" Vexthal asked his science officer, who was busy studying her readings. Zara's tentacles moved quickly over her control panel as she gathered more information. "Captain, this battlefield is very old. The debris has been floating here for at least 300 years. Most of the wreckage is completely dead, but there is something unusual ahead of us." Lieutenant Cross looked up from his engineering station with worried eyes. "Sir, there is a massive ship directly in front of us. It's much larger than anything we have ever seen before. The design is completely unknown to our databases." Vexthal moved closer to the main screen to get a better look at what they had found. The ship that appeared before them was unlike anything the Zeltharian people had ever encountered in their travels across the galaxy. It was huge and angular with a design that seemed built for one purpose only: war. The hull was dark and scarred from battle, but somehow it remained intact while everything else around it had been destroyed. "Take us closer, but keep our weapons ready," Vexthal ordered his crew. "I want to know what this thing is and where it came from." As their ship moved nearer to the mysterious vessel, more details became visible on the screen. The unknown ship was at least 4 times larger than their own exploration vessel. Its hull was covered in strange markings and symbols that meant nothing to any of the Zeltharian crew members. Along the side of the ship, faded letters could be seen spelling out words in an alien language. UES Retribution. Dr. Neth, the ship's medical officer, studied the readings from her position. "The atmosphere inside that vessel appears to be similar to what we breathe. Whatever species built this ship had environmental needs much like our own." "That's interesting, but also concerning," Zara added while continuing her scans. "The power signatures are very strange. Most of the ship appears to be completely shut down, but there are some systems that seem to be in a hibernation state. It's as if the ship is sleeping and waiting for something." Vexthal considered their options carefully. The galaxy was full of dangerous things, and ancient battlefields often contained weapons or technology that could be harmful to those who found them. However, the scientific value of this discovery could be enormous. A ship this old and this advanced could teach them much about the history of their galaxy. "Commander Zara, scan for any signs of life aboard that vessel," he commanded. Zara worked at her station for several minutes before responding. "I'm detecting some very faint energy readings that could be life signs, but they are so weak I cannot be certain. If there is life aboard that ship, it would have to be in some kind of suspended state." The bridge fell silent as everyone considered what this might mean. A ship full of sleeping aliens from an unknown species could be incredibly dangerous. On the other hand, it could also be the greatest discovery in galactic history. "Sir," Cross spoke up nervously, "I should point out that this ship's weapon systems appear to be far more advanced than anything currently used by any known civilization. Even in its current dormant state, it could probably destroy our entire fleet if it wanted to." Vexthal nodded slowly. The lieutenant was right to be concerned, but the opportunity before them was too important to ignore. "Prepare a boarding party. We're going to investigate this ship personally." "Captain, is that wise?" Zara asked with obvious concern in her voice. "We have no idea what we might find over there or what kind of defenses that ship might have." "That's exactly why we need to go," Vexthal replied firmly. "If this ship contains technology or knowledge that could benefit our people, we have a duty to investigate. If it contains something dangerous, we need to know about it before someone else finds it." The captain turned to address his entire bridge crew. "Dr. Neth, Zara, and Cross will come with me. The rest of you will remain here and monitor our progress. If anything goes wrong, you are to retreat immediately and report our findings to the Galactic Council." As the boarding party prepared their equipment, Vexthal couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something that would change everything they thought they knew about their galaxy. The ship floating before them was clearly from a civilization that possessed technology far beyond anything currently known. The question was whether that civilization was friend or foe. Within an hour, the small Zeltharian shuttle was making its way toward the docking bay of the mysterious vessel. As they approached, Vexthal noticed that the ship's hull was covered in battle damage, but none of it appeared to be from weapons he recognized. Whatever had fought this ship used technology that was just as advanced and just as unknown. The Zeltharian shuttle docked with the unknown vessel without any problems. As soon as the airlock sealed and Dr. Neth confirmed that the atmosphere was safe to breathe, the boarding party stepped into the alien ship. The corridor they entered was dark and silent, with only the faint hum of distant machinery breaking the eerie quiet. "The artificial gravity is working," Cross observed as they walked deeper into the ship. "Whatever power source this vessel uses, it's been maintaining basic life support systems for centuries." Captain Vexthal led the way with his scanner in one hand and a weapon in the other. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly designed for beings much larger than the Zeltharians. Emergency lighting began to flicker on as they moved through the ship, as if their presence was triggering some kind of automatic response. "The ship's computer systems are reacting to us," Zara reported while studying her readings. "I'm detecting increased power flow throughout the vessel. It's almost like the ship is waking up." The walls of the corridor were made from a metal that none of them recognized. It was darker than steel, but seemed much stronger. Along the walls were panels covered with symbols and text in the same unknown language they had seen on the outside of the ship. Some of the panels had screens that were beginning to light up with information. "The written language appears to be very complex," Dr. Neth noted as she examined one of the displays. "It uses symbols that represent sounds rather than ideas. This suggests a highly advanced civilization with sophisticated communication methods." As they continued exploring, they found rooms that were clearly designed for living beings. There were quarters with beds sized for large humanoid creatures, dining areas with tables and chairs, and recreation rooms with equipment they couldn't identify. Everything was clean and well-maintained despite the ship's apparent age. This vessel was designed to house a large crew for extended periods, Vexthal observed. Whatever mission this ship was on, it was meant to last a very long time. They eventually found their way to what appeared to be the bridge of the ship. It was a massive room filled with control stations and display screens. The main view screen dominated one wall and showed a view of space outside the ship. As they entered the room, more systems began to activate on their own. Suddenly, text began appearing on the main screen in the alien language. The letters moved quickly across the display as if the ship's computer was running through some kind of diagnostic routine. Then, without warning, the text changed to perfect galactic standard, the common language used throughout their civilization. "Welcome aboard the UES Retribution," appeared on the screen. "Please state your purpose for boarding this vessel." The four Zeltharians stood in shocked silence. Not only was this ancient ship's computer still functioning, but it could communicate in their language. This meant that whoever built this vessel had knowledge of their civilization. "I am Captain Vexthal of the Zeltharian Exploration Service," he said aloud, hoping the ship's computer could hear him. "We discovered your vessel in this debris field and came aboard to investigate." "Identity confirmed," the computer responded. "You are representatives of the artificial civilization designated as Galactic Council Construct Number 7. Your presence aboard this vessel constitutes a potential security threat." "Artificial civilization," Zara whispered in confusion. "What does that mean?" Before anyone could respond, the ship's computer continued speaking. "This vessel has been in autonomous standby mode for 312 standard years. Crew has been maintained in stasis pending completion of primary mission objectives." "There are still living beings on this ship," Dr. Neth said with amazement. "After all this time, the crew is still alive." Cross was studying his engineering scanner with growing alarm. Captain, the power levels throughout this ship are increasing rapidly. Whatever systems were dormant before, they're all coming online now. The lights in the bridge became brighter and more control stations began to activate. On the main screen, new information began to appear. It showed star charts and technical data that was far more advanced than anything in their own databases. Captain, Zara called out urgently, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from deeper within the ship. If I'm reading this correctly, this vessel has weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Vexthal felt a chill run through his body. They had stumbled upon something far more dangerous than they had imagined. This wasn't just an ancient, derelict ship. It was a fully functional warship with technology that exceeded anything their civilization possessed. Computer, he addressed the ship's artificial intelligence. What was your primary mission? Mission parameters are classified, came the reply. However, current situation requires immediate crew revival. Hostile alien. Presence detected aboard vessel. We're not hostile, Vexthal said quickly. We're explorers. We mean no harm. All unknown alien life forms are classified as potential threats according to standing orders, the computer responded. Initiating emergency revival procedures. Estimated time to full crew consciousness, 47 minutes. The four Zeltharians looked at each other with growing fear. They were about to meet the crew of this ancient warship, and they had no idea what kind of beings they would be facing. The ship's computer had called their entire civilization artificial, which made no sense. Their people had evolved naturally on their homeworld, just like every other species in the galaxy. We should return to our ship, Cross suggested nervously. If this crew sees us as a threat, we could be in serious danger. No, Vexthal decided. This is too important. Whatever we're about to discover here could change everything we know about our galaxy. We need to stay and make contact with these beings. Deep within the ship, they could hear the sound of machinery coming to life. Somewhere in the darkness, an ancient crew was awakening from a sleep that had lasted for centuries. Soon, they would have answers to questions they hadn't even known to ask. Deep within the UES Retribution, Commander Jake Morrison felt consciousness return like ice water flooding through his veins. The stasis pod that had been his home for over 3 centuries began its revival sequence, pumping his body full of stimulants and nutrients needed to bring him back to life. His muscles screamed in protest as feeling returned to limbs that had been motionless for longer than most civilizations existed. The pod's restraints retracted with a soft hiss, and Morrison tumbled forward onto the cold metal deck. Around him, hundreds of other pods were opening in sequence, releasing the crew of humanity's most advanced warship back into the waking world. The revival chamber filled with the sounds of coughing, groaning, and confused voices as 300 human beings struggled to remember who and where they were. Status report, Morrison managed to croak out as soon as he could stand upright. His throat felt like sandpaper, and his legs shook from the effort of supporting his weight after so long in artificial sleep. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park was already at a nearby control station, her fingers moving quickly over the holographic interface despite her obvious discomfort. As the ship's executive officer, she had trained herself to function immediately upon revival, regardless of how terrible she felt. Sir, we've been in stasis for 312 years, she reported while data flowed across her screens. The ship's AI maintained minimal power and monitored surrounding space for potential threats. Current situation: we have 6 unknown alien life forms aboard the ship. They've been here for approximately 4 hours and have accessed multiple ship systems. Morrison's military training kicked in immediately, pushing aside the fog of stasis. Recovery. During humanity's expansion into space, first contact situations had rarely ended well for either species involved. The fact that aliens had boarded their ship while the crew was helpless made this situation extremely dangerous. Red alert, he commanded, his voice growing stronger. All hands to battle stations. Security teams to intercept the boarders. I want them alive for questioning if possible. Throughout the ship, Newly awakened crew members were struggling to reach their assigned positions. Marines grabbed weapons from storage lockers, while engineers hurried to bring all ship systems online. The UES Retribution had been humanity's most advanced warship when it departed Earth, equipped with technology that pushed the boundaries of human science. Sergeant Tony Rodriguez led the security response team through the ship's corridors. Despite having just awakened from centuries of sleep, his squad moved with practiced precision. They had trained for situations exactly like this during their original mission preparation. The possibility of encountering hostile alien life had always been considered likely. Movement sensors show the intruders are in the data core section, reported Corporal Amy Chen as she checked her scanner. They appear to be downloading information from our computer systems. Rodriguez motioned for his team to spread out as they approached the data core. Through the open doorway, they could see 4 strange beings working at various control stations. The aliens were tall and thin with multiple tentacle-like appendages instead of arms and legs. They moved gracefully around the human-designed equipment, despite its obvious incompatibility with their physiology. "You will surrender immediately," Rodriguez announced as his team entered the room with weapons raised. "Any hostile action will be met with lethal force." Captain Vexthal turned toward the voice and found himself facing 6 human soldiers in full combat gear. The beings were smaller than he had expected based on the ship's design, but they moved with deadly efficiency that made his skin crawl. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their body language radiated controlled violence. "We mean no harm," Vexthal said quickly, raising his tentacles in what he hoped was a universal gesture of surrender. "We are explorers from the Galactic Council. We found your ship floating in space and came aboard to investigate." "Galactic Council," Rodriguez repeated while keeping his weapon trained on the alien captain. "Never heard of it. Chen, escort our guest to the briefing room. The commander will want to speak with them personally." As the security team led the Zeltharian boarding party through the ship's corridors, Vexthal got his first good look at the vessel's interior. Everything was built for function rather than comfort, with clean lines and efficient design that spoke of a military mindset. The walls were covered with displays showing tactical information and ship status updates. "Your ship is remarkable," Dr. Neth commented to one of the guards. "The technology here is far more advanced than anything we've encountered." "Save it for the commander," Rodriguez replied curtly. "He'll have plenty of questions for you. Now." The ship's medical bay, Dr. Helen Clark was running diagnostics on the crew's revival process. As the ship's chief medical officer, she was responsible for ensuring that 3 centuries of stasis hadn't caused any permanent damage to the human personnel. "All crew members show normal vital signs," she reported to Morrison over the communications system. "Some muscle weakness and disorientation is expected, but everyone should be fully functional within a few hours." "What about our guests?" Morrison asked as he made his way to the briefing room. "Unknown," Clark replied. "I've never seen their species before. Their biology appears to be carbon-based, but beyond that I can't tell you much without a proper examination." Chief Engineer Ben Murphy was busy in the engine room bringing the ship's primary systems back to full power. The Retribution had been designed to run on minimal power for extended periods, but full operation required much more energy. "Fusion reactors are online and stable," he reported. "All weapon systems are functional and defensive shields are charging. We're ready for whatever comes next, sir." Morrison nodded grimly as he approached the briefing room. The aliens aboard. His ship claimed to represent something called the Galactic Council, which implied a widespread civilization spanning multiple star systems. The fact that humanity had never encountered any evidence of such a civilization during their expansion into space was deeply troubling. As he entered the briefing room, Morrison got his first look at the beings who had awakened him and his crew. They were clearly intelligent and technologically advanced, but their presence raised more questions than it answered. How long had they been watching humanity? What did they want? And most importantly, could they be trusted? The briefing room aboard the UES Retribution had been designed for high-level military meetings, but it had never hosted anything quite like this. Commander Jake Morrison sat across from Captain Vexthal and his crew, studying the alien beings, with careful attention. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife as two completely different species attempted their first formal communication. "You claim to represent a galactic civilization," Morrison began, his voice steady, despite the unprecedented nature of the situation. Yet according to our records, this entire region of space was uninhabited when we departed from Earth over 3 centuries ago. Vexthal's tentacles moved nervously as he tried to process what the human commander was telling him. "That cannot be correct. The Galactic Council has maintained civilization throughout this sector for over 2,000 standard years. We have detailed records of our expansion and development." Dr. Helen Clark leaned forward from her position at Morrison's side. "Our species has been traveling through space for more than 500 years. We've explored dozens of star systems and established colonies on multiple worlds. In all that time, we never found any evidence of intelligent alien life." "Impossible," Zara interjected, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "Our home world of Zelthar Prime has been inhabited by our people for thousands of generations. We achieved spaceflight naturally through our own scientific development." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park activated the holographic display system in the center of the table. "Perhaps we should compare our star charts and see if we can figure out where the confusion lies." The display showed a 3-dimensional map of the local galactic region with hundreds of star systems marked in different colors. Morrison gestured toward several systems that were highlighted in blue. "These are human colonies established over the past 3 centuries, he explained. "We found all of these worlds to be uninhabited when we arrived. No signs of previous civilization, no archaeological evidence of intelligent life." Vexthal studied the display with growing confusion. Many of the systems Morrison indicated as human colonies were ones that the Galactic Council recognized as belonging to various member species. "This makes no sense. Those systems have been inhabited for centuries by different civilizations." "Show us your home world," Morrison requested. The display shifted to focus on a single star system, containing a lush green planet orbiting a yellow star. Vexthal pointed to the world with obvious pride. "This is Zelthar Prime, where my people evolved, over millions of years." Chief Engineer Ben Murphy frowned as he studied the coordinates. "Computer, display stellar cartography for system designation Sol Gamma 4429. The holographic display changed to show the same star system. But in this version, the planet that Vexthal had identified as his homeworld appeared as a barren, radiation-blasted wasteland completely incapable of supporting life. "That's impossible," Dr. Neth whispered, staring at the contradictory information. "That's our homeworld. Our people have lived there for countless generations." Dr. Clark's face had gone pale as she began to understand the implications of what they were seeing. "Commander, I think we need to review the classified files from our original mission." Morrison nodded grimly and activated his command codes. The holographic display filled with information that had been sealed away for over 3 centuries. Data so sensitive that only the ship's senior officers had been allowed to access it. "Our mission was classified at the highest levels," Morrison explained to the alien delegation. "Humanity discovered evidence of an ancient threat to all life in the galaxy. Entities we called the Harvesters had been systematically destroying civilizations for millions of years. The display showed images and data that had been gathered by human deep space probes, entire star systems that had been reduced to empty space, worlds that had been stripped down to their core elements, and vast machines that consumed matter and energy on an unimaginable scale. The Harvesters weren't just destroying civilizations," Park continued the explanation. "They were harvesting the raw materials to create something new. After they finished consuming a region of space, they would rebuild it according to their own design." Vexthal felt his understanding of reality beginning to crumble as he absorbed this information. You're suggesting that our entire civilization is artificial? That we're some kind of creation rather than natural evolution? Not just your civilization, Morrison replied quietly. According to our intelligence, the harvesters had been working in this galaxy for over 10 million years. Every species, every world, every civilization in this region of space, all of it was built by them using the remains of what came before. The room fell silent as the full scope of the revelation sank in. The Zeltharian crew members looked at each other with expressions of shock and disbelief. Everything they had believed about their origins, their history, and their place in the universe had just been turned upside down. But why? Zara asked weakly. Why would these harvesters create entire civilizations just to destroy them? Dr. Clark consulted her data files before responding. We never fully understood their motivations. Our best theory was that they were conducting some kind of vast experiment, creating different types of life and civilization to study how they developed and interacted. The artificial civilizations weren't just copies of what came before, Murphy added. The harvesters seemed to be testing different variables. Some species were more aggressive, others more peaceful. Some developed faster technology, others focused on art and philosophy. It was like they were running thousands of different simulations at the same time. Morrison stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the debris field that surrounded their ship. This battlefield we're sitting in, this is where humanity made our last stand against the harvesters. We knew we couldn't defeat them in conventional warfare, so we developed something desperate. What happened to them? Vexthal asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. We stopped them, Morrison replied, but his tone suggested that victory had come at a terrible cost. But in doing so, we may have doomed ourselves and everyone else in the galaxy. He turned back to face the alien delegation, his expression grave. Captain Vexthal, your people and all the other species in the Galactic Council are the Harvester's final creation. You were meant to be their masterpiece, a self-sustaining civilization that could develop and grow without their direct intervention. And now that we've awakened, Park added ominously, we need to decide what to do about it. Commander Morrison led the alien delegation deeper into the UES Retribution, through corridors that required increasingly higher security clearances to access. The ship's most classified sections were protected by multiple layers of quantum encryption and biometric locks that had kept their secrets safe for over 3 centuries. What I'm about to show you has been classified at the highest levels of human government, Morrison explained as they approached a heavily reinforced door. The information contained in these files could destabilize the entire galactic community if it became widely known. The door slid open to reveal a chamber lined with data storage units and analysis equipment. In the center of the room stood a holographic display system more advanced than anything the Zeltharians had seen before. Dr. Helen Clark activated the system and began calling up files that made Captain Vexthal's tentacles writhe with anxiety. During our war with the Harvesters, humanity devoted enormous resources to understanding our enemy, Clark explained as images filled the display. What we discovered changed everything we thought we knew about the nature of life in the universe. Holographic display showed recordings of Harvester technology in action, massive ships that seemed to bend space around them, weapons that could disintegrate matter at the quantum level, and machines that could reshape entire worlds in a matter of days. The scale of the destruction was beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever imagined possible. The Harvesters weren't just another alien species, Lieutenant Commander Park continued. They were entities from outside our reality, using our universe as raw material for their experiments. They could manipulate matter, energy, time, and space itself according to their will. Vexthal stared at the images with growing horror. How could any civilization develop such power? It's beyond the laws of physics as we understand them. That's because they weren't bound by the same laws that govern natural evolution, Chief Engineer Murphy replied. The Harvesters existed in dimensions beyond our normal space-time. When they entered our universe, they brought their own rules with them. The display shifted to show detailed analysis of harvester artifacts that human scientists had managed to recover. The technology was so advanced that even after centuries of study, humanity had only begun to understand how it worked. Their standard procedure was always the same, Morrison explained. They would arrive in a star system, study the local life forms for a period of time, then systematically harvest everything. Planets, stars, even the space between them. Nothing was left untouched. Dr. Neth leaned forward to study the technical data more closely. But if they destroyed everything, how did civilizations like ours come to exist? Because destruction was only the first phase, Clark answered. After the harvesters finished consuming a region of space, they would begin the reconstruction process. Using the raw materials they had gathered, they would build new worlds, new ecosystems, and new forms of life. The holographic display showed time-lapse recordings of this process, dead star systems being rebuilt from nothing, planets being terraformed and seeded with life, and entire civilizations being guided through accelerated evolution until they reached spacefaring capability. The artificial civilizations weren't random creations, Park explained. Each one was designed to test specific variables. Some species were made more aggressive to see how quickly they would develop military technology. Others were given enhanced creativity to study artistic and philosophical development. You're telling us that our entire existence is nothing more than a laboratory experiment, Zara said with obvious distress. That everything we've achieved, everything we've built, is just part of some cosmic test. Morrison's expression was grim as he nodded. According to our analysis, the harvesters had been running these experiments for over 10 million years. They would create civilizations, study them for a few thousand years, then harvest them and start over with new variables. But something changed, Murphy added. About 500,000 years ago, the harvesters altered their standard procedure. Instead of harvesting their artificial civilizations after a few millennia, they began allowing them to develop independently for much longer periods. The display showed star charts marking the locations of various artificial civilizations throughout the galaxy. There were hundreds of them, each one representing millions of years of directed evolution and development. We believe they were preparing for their final experiment, Clark explained. Creating a galaxy-wide civilization that could sustain itself indefinitely without their direct intervention. Your Galactic Council represents the culmination of that work. Vexthal felt as if the foundations of his reality were crumbling beneath him. If this is all true, then what happened to the harvesters? Why did they abandon their experiment? Morrison's hand moved unconsciously toward the weapon at his side. They didn't abandon it. Humanity found them and forced them to stop. How? Dr. Neth asked. If these harvesters were as powerful as you say, how could any natural civilization hope to defeat them? Because we weren't fighting them conventionally, Morrison replied. We couldn't match their technology or their power, so we had to find another way. We built something that could fight them on their own level. The holographic display changed to show technical specifications for a device that made no sense to the Zeltharian observers. The mathematics involved equations that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics, and the power requirements were beyond anything they could imagine. The Omega device, Park said quietly. Humanity's ultimate weapon and our greatest shame. What does it do? Vexthal asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. It unravels the quantum foundations of reality itself, Morrison explained. Anything caught in its effect radius doesn't just die or get destroyed, it ceases to exist entirely. No energy, no matter, no trace that it was ever there at all. The implications of such a weapon were staggering. Cross, who had remained silent, throughout most of the discussion, finally spoke up. You built a weapon that could erase existence itself? We built a weapon to fight gods, Morrison corrected. And we used it. The display showed recordings of the Omega device in action. A sphere of absolute nothingness expanding through space, consuming harvester ships and technology as if they had never existed. The weapon had worked perfectly, eliminating the immediate threat to humanity. But the device had an unexpected side effect, Clark continued. Once activated, it created a self-sustaining reaction that began spreading beyond our control. We barely managed to contain it before it consumed our entire solar system. The harvesters were gone, Morrison said, but we realized that we had awakened something potentially even more dangerous. The Omega effect could theoretically consume the entire universe if it was ever fully unleashed. He looked directly at Vexthal as he spoke his next words. That's why we went into stasis. We hoped that the artificial civilizations would develop naturally and peacefully, that the galaxy would heal from the scars of the Harvester War. But if someone is searching for ancient weapons, if they're trying to uncover the truth about the past, then maybe our war isn't over after all. The deepest levels of the UES Retribution were places that most of the crew had never seen, even during their original mission. Commander Morrison led the alien delegation through corridors lined with warning signs in multiple human languages, past security checkpoints that required DNA confirmation and quantum key verification to pass. Beyond this point, only 5 people aboard this ship have clearance, Morrison explained as they approached the final security barrier. What we're about to show you represents humanity's greatest scientific achievement and our most terrible mistake. The final chamber was smaller than the others they had visited, but the security measures protecting it were beyond anything the Zeltharians had ever encountered. Energy fields hummed with barely contained power, and the walls themselves seemed to vibrate with some kind of exotic radiation that made their skin crawl. In the center of the room, suspended within a complex array of containment systems, was a device that appeared almost mundane in its simplicity. A black sphere roughly the size of a human head, smooth and featureless, except for the way it seemed to bend light around its surface. The Omega device, Dr. Helen Clark announced quietly. The weapon that ended the Harvester War and nearly destroyed the universe in the process. Captain Vexthal stared at the device with a mixture of fascination and terror. Despite its small size, something about the sphere made his instincts scream warnings of danger. This tiny thing destroyed beings that could reshape reality itself? Size is irrelevant when dealing with fundamental forces, Chief Engineer Ben Murphy replied as he began calling up technical specifications on the chamber's display systems. The Omega device doesn't work by applying force or energy. It works by convincing the universe that certain things never existed in the first place. The displays around the chamber showed mathematical equations that hurt to look at directly. The numbers seemed to twist and bend in ways that violated basic principles of logic, describing relationships between matter, energy, and space-time that shouldn't be possible. Traditional weapons destroy their targets by converting matter to energy, Lieutenant Commander Park explained. Nuclear weapons release the binding energy in atomic nuclei. Antimatter weapons annihilate matter and antimatter together. But the Omega device operates on a completely different principle. Dr. Neth studied the readouts with growing confusion. I don't understand these equations. They seem to describe processes that violate conservation of energy. They do, Clark confirmed. The Omega device creates what we call a cascade failure in the quantum foam of space-time itself. It doesn't destroy matter or convert it to energy. It simply makes the universe forget that the matter ever existed. Morrison gestured toward a series of recording devices mounted around the containment system. We documented its first test firing against a small asteroid. Watch what happens. The holographic display showed an asteroid roughly 1 kilometer in diameter floating in empty space. A small probe approached the asteroid and deployed what appeared to be a miniature version of the Omega device. When the weapon activated, the asteroid didn't explode or disintegrate. It simply vanished as if it had never been there at all. No energy release, no debris, no radiation, Murphy noted. The asteroid and everything it was made of ceased to exist on a fundamental level. Even the gravitational effects it had been creating simply stopped. Zara's tentacles writhed with agitation as she processed this information. How is such a thing possible? Matter cannot simply cease to exist. Under normal circumstances, you would be correct, Morrison replied, but the Omega device creates abnormal circumstances. It generates a field that disrupts the quantum processes that give rise to matter and energy in the first place. The display showed more technical data about the device's construction. It had been built using exotic matter harvested from Harvester. Technology combined with theoretical physics that pushed human science far beyond its normal limits. Building it required resources from our entire civilization, Clark explained. Every major industrial facility, every research institution, every military installation contributed to the project. It took us nearly 50 years to complete. And when you used it against the Harvesters, Vexthal asked, what happened? Morrison's expression darkened as he called up recordings from the final battle. We lured their main fleet to a prepared position and activated the device. It worked exactly as designed. The entire Harvester force simply ceased to exist. The recordings showed hundreds of massive alien ships vanishing in an expanding sphere of nothingness. The effect was both fascinating and terrifying to watch, like seeing reality itself being erased one piece at a time. But we hadn't fully understood the implications of what we were creating, Park continued. The Omega effect is self-sustaining. Once the cascade failure begins, it continues to spread until something stops it. What could stop such a process? Dr. Neth asked. We're not entirely certain, Murphy admitted. We managed to contain it. Using every piece of exotic technology we had captured from the Harvesters, but we're still not sure why the containment worked. The mathematics suggest that once fully unleashed, the Omega effect could theoretically consume the entire observable universe. The implications of this revelation were staggering. Cross, who had been studying the containment systems, looked up with obvious fear in his eyes. Are you telling us that this device could destroy everything that exists? Not destroy, Morrison corrected. Erase, as if it had never existed at all. Every star, every planet, every living being in the galaxy could simply cease to be, and the universe would continue as if none of it had ever happened. The chamber fell silent as the alien delegation absorbed the full scope of what they were seeing. The device, floating before them, had the power to end existence itself, and it was, controlled by a species that had already proven willing to use it. Why are you showing us this? Vexthal asked quietly. Morrison turned to face the Zeltharian captain directly. Because your people found us, because you woke us up, and because somewhere in your Galactic Council there might be others who are looking for weapons from the old war. The Omega device was never meant to be used again, Clark added. We went into stasis hoping that the galaxy would develop peacefully, that the artificial civilizations would create something better than what came before. But if someone is actively searching for Harvester technology, if they're trying to uncover the secrets of the past, then we may have no choice but to act. Park stepped closer to the containment system, her hand resting on the activation controls. We've already used this weapon once to save the galaxy from the Harvesters. If necessary, we'll use it again to save the galaxy from itself. The message was clear. Humanity possessed the ultimate weapon, and they were prepared to use it if they deemed it necessary. The question now was what the Galactic Council would do with this knowledge, and whether the artificial civilizations could prove themselves worthy of continued existence. The return journey to the UES Retribution's main briefing room felt like a walk through a nightmare for the Zeltharian delegation. Captain Vexthal and his crew moved in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process everything they had learned about their origins and the terrible weapon that now hung over their entire civilization like a sword waiting to fall. Commander Morrison sat across from them once again, but the atmosphere in the room had changed completely. Where before there had been curiosity and uncertainty, now there was the cold weight of ultimate responsibility. The human commander held the power to erase the entire galactic community from existence, and everyone in the room knew it. "I need you to understand something," Morrison began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "When we went into stasis, we made a choice to trust in the potential of the artificial civilizations. We could have activated the Omega device and erased all traces of Harvester influence from the galaxy, but we chose not to." Dr. Helen Clark pulled up holographic displays showing the current state of galactic civilization. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of species, billions of individual lives all going about their daily existence without any knowledge of their artificial origins. Your people, and all the others in the Galactic Council, have built something remarkable, she continued. Art, science, philosophy, culture, you've created genuine civilization despite your artificial beginnings. That's exactly what we hoped would happen. Vexthal found his voice despite the terror that gripped him. But you're considering destroying it all anyway. Not considering, Morrison corrected. Preparing for the possibility. There's a difference. Lieutenant Commander Park activated another display showing intelligence reports that had been gathered by automated probes over the past few hours. Since our ship began transmitting again, we've detected several instances of Harvester technology being actively studied by various factions within your Galactic Council. The images showed archaeological sites where ancient artifacts were being excavated, research facilities where Harvester devices were being reverse-engineered, and military installations where weapons based on Harvester principles were being developed. "Someone out there knows the truth about the past," Chief Engineer Murphy observed. "They're actively seeking out remnants of Harvester technology, probably hoping to gain some kind of advantage over their neighbors. That's exactly the kind of behavior that led to the original Harvester War," Morrison added grimly. "Species competing for access to technology they don't understand, trying to gain power without considering the consequences." Zara leaned forward, her tentacles moving anxiously. "But surely you can see that most of our people have no knowledge of these activities. The vast majority of galactic civilization is peaceful and innocent. The vast majority of humanity was peaceful and innocent, too," Morrison replied. "That didn't stop the Harvesters from targeting us for extinction when we became too advanced for their liking." Dr. Neth spoke up from her position at the table. "What would it take to convince you that our civilization deserves to continue existing?" Morrison considered the question carefully before responding. "Proof that the galactic community can police itself. Evidence that the dangerous research into Harvester technology will be stopped before it can cause another catastrophe." "And if we can't provide that proof?" Vexthal asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Then we'll have to stop it ourselves," Morrison said simply, "even if it means activating the Omega device again." The room fell silent as the full implications of that statement sank in. The humans weren't bluffing or making empty threats. They genuinely believed that erasing galactic civilization might be preferable to allowing another Harvester-level threat to emerge. "How long do we have?" Cross asked quietly. Park consulted her tactical displays before answering. "Our preliminary analysis suggests that several research projects are approaching critical thresholds. If current progress continues, someone will successfully recreate functional Harvester technology within the next 50 to 100 standard years." "That gives us time to work together," Clark suggested. "Your people have influence within the Galactic Council. You could help us identify the dangerous research and find ways to shut it down peacefully. Or you could warn them about us," Morrison added. "Tell them that humanity has returned and that we're watching. Sometimes the threat of consequences is enough to change behavior." Vexthal considered their options carefully. The choice before him was staggering in its scope and consequences. He could return to the Galactic Council and reveal everything he had learned, potentially causing panic and chaos throughout galactic civilization. Or he could try to work secretly with the humans to prevent the very research that might doom his people. "There's a third option," he said finally. "We could tell our people the truth about their origins, all of it. Let the entire galactic community know where they came from and what dangers they face. That would likely cause the collapse of most governmental systems, Murphy pointed out. Learning that your entire existence is artificial tends to have that effect on people. But it might also unite them, Dr. Neth suggested. If everyone knew that they shared the same artificial origins, it could eliminate the tribal conflicts that drive most research into dangerous technologies. Morrison shook his head. History suggests otherwise. When people learn that their fundamental beliefs about themselves are false, they tend to become more desperate and unpredictable, not less. So what do you propose? Vexthal asked. You return to your people and begin working within the system to shut down Harvester research, Morrison replied. We'll monitor your progress and provide assistance when possible. If you succeed in eliminating the threat, we'll return to stasis and leave the galaxy to develop naturally. And if we fail? Morrison's hand moved unconsciously toward the controls that could activate the ship's most terrible weapon. Then we'll do what we did before. We'll save the galaxy from itself, even if it means destroying everything we're trying to protect. The weight of ultimate responsibility settled on Vexthal's shoulders like a physical burden. The survival of billions of lives across thousands of worlds now depended on his ability to convince his people to abandon research that they saw as vital to their security and advancement. How will we contact you? He asked. We'll be watching, Park assured him. When you're ready to report your progress, or if you need our help, just send a transmission on the frequencies we'll provide. We'll hear you. As the meeting drew to a close, Vexthal realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy he had known, the civilization he had served, even his own identity, all of it had been fundamentally changed by this encounter with humanity's ghost ship and the weapon that should have stayed buried. 6 months had passed since the Zeltharian delegation returned to their home world with the most important and terrifying secret in galactic history. Captain Vexthal stood in his private office aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, staring out at the stars and wondering if he was looking at a civilization doomed to extinction. The work had been harder than anyone could have imagined. Identifying research projects that involved harvester technology required access to classified information from dozens of different species and governments. Shutting down those projects without revealing the true reason required political maneuvering that pushed the limits of what the Galactic Council could accomplish. Sir, his aide Commander Zara entered the office with a datapad containing the latest progress reports. We've successfully convinced the Altarian Republic to suspend their quantum displacement research. They believe it's part of a general technology sharing initiative. That's the 15th project we've managed to shut down, Vexthal replied, though his tone carried no satisfaction. Intelligence suggests there are at least 40 more active research programs throughout Council space. The scale of the problem had become clear within weeks of their return. Harvester artifacts and technology had been discovered on dozens of worlds over the centuries, and nearly every major government had secret programs attempting to reverse engineer the devices. Most of the research was driven by legitimate scientific curiosity or defensive concerns about neighboring civilizations. The consortium of traders is asking questions about our sudden interest in archaeological oversight, Zara reported. They want to know why the Council is suddenly concerned about research that has been ongoing for generations. Tell them it's a matter of galactic security, Vexthal instructed, which is certainly true even if we can't explain the details. Through the window, he could see other ships in the Council fleet going about their normal duties, their crews unaware that they were living on borrowed time. Somewhere among the stars, the UES Retribution waited and watched, its human crew monitoring galactic communications for signs of dangerous breakthroughs. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. Vexthal activated his secure communication system and found himself looking at the familiar face of Commander Jake Morrison, who appeared exactly as he had 6 months ago. "Captain Vexthal," Morrison greeted him with a nod. "I trust you've been making progress with our mutual concern." "Some progress," Vexthal admitted. "We've shut down 15 research projects and convinced several governments to implement new oversight procedures. But the work is slow, and we're running out of political capital to spend on convincing people to abandon research they see as vital." Morrison's expression remained neutral, but Vexthal could see the calculation going on behind his eyes. "Our monitoring indicates that the hegemony of Kresh has achieved a significant breakthrough in their analysis of harvester propulsion systems. They've successfully created a stable space-time distortion field." The news hit Vexthal like a physical blow. The Kresh hegemony was one of the most militaristic governments in the galaxy, constantly engaged in border conflicts with their neighbors. If they had gained access to harvester-level technology, it could destabilize the entire galactic community. "How? Long before they can weaponize it?" he asked. "Our analysis suggests 6 to 8 months, Morrison replied. "After that, they'll have the capability to bypass any conventional defense system in the galaxy." Vexthal closed his eyes and tried to think of a solution. The Kresh hegemony was notoriously secretive and aggressive. They would never voluntarily shut down research that gave them such a significant military advantage, and any attempt to force them would likely trigger the very war that everyone was trying to avoid. "What are your recommendations?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We're prepared to take direct action," Morrison said simply. "Our ship can eliminate the Kresh research facility without any trace of our involvement. It would appear to be an accident, or perhaps sabotage by one of their enemies." The offer hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Vexthal knew that Morrison was offering to commit an act of war against a member of the Galactic Council, all to prevent a larger catastrophe that might never actually occur. "And if you're discovered," Vexthal asked, "if the Kresh or anyone else learns that humanity has returned, then we'll face that situation when it arises," Morrison replied. "But the alternative is allowing them to perfect technology that could lead to another galaxy-wide war." Before Vexthal could respond, his aide Zara burst into the office with obvious urgency. "Sir, we're receiving reports of a massive spatial distortion near the Kresh border. Something has completely destroyed their primary research facility." Morrison's image flickered slightly, and when it stabilized, his expression had changed to one of grim satisfaction. "The threat has been eliminated. The research data and all personnel involved in the project have been removed from existence." "You've already acted," Vexthal realized with a mixture of relief and horror. "The situation required immediate intervention," Morrison explained. "We detected signs that they were preparing to test their prototype device against a neighboring system. We couldn't allow that to happen." Zara was monitoring incoming communications, and her expression grew increasingly worried. "Sir, the Kresh government is demanding a full investigation. They're claiming that their facility was destroyed by an unknown weapon unlike anything in the galactic arsenal." "Let them investigate," Morrison said calmly. "They won't find any evidence of our involvement because we don't leave evidence. As far as the galaxy is concerned, the facility suffered a catastrophic accident during their experiments with dangerous technology. The implications of what had just happened were staggering. Humanity had essentially declared themselves the secret guardians of galactic civilization, with the authority to eliminate any threat they deemed too dangerous to exist. They had appointed themselves as judges, jury, and executioner for the entire galaxy. "How many more times will this be necessary?" Vexthal asked. "As many times as it takes," Morrison replied without hesitation. "We've already identified 17 other research projects that pose similar risks. If conventional diplomacy can't shut them down, we'll handle them the same way we handled the creche facility. And if someone eventually discovers what you're doing?" Morrison's smile was cold and without humor. "Then we'll activate the Omega device and start over with a clean slate. The galaxy will survive even if the current civilization doesn't." The transmission ended, leaving Vexthal alone with the terrible knowledge of what his species had awakened. The UES Retribution wasn't just a ghost ship from humanity's past. It was a weapon of judgment that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Outside his window, the stars continued to shine with the same beauty they always had, but Vexthal now knew that their light was watched by guardians who possessed the power to extinguish it forever. Humanity had returned from their long sleep, and they had brought with them the weapon that should have stayed buried. The age of artificial civilizations was ending, and the age of human oversight had begun. Whether that would prove to be salvation or damnation remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again.